So our mission statement journey, we started in this process about 2 years ago, really, as we were going through the self-study for our reaccreditation uh, program. It really requires you to dig deep and think about all aspects of your founding documents and take a look at them and think about whether or not it really still matches with where the school is today. So where we've ended up, if you go to the next slide, this is our new mission statement. Washington School for Girls ignites the joyful pursuit of learning and inspires lives of faith-filled purpose, leadership, and service. If you go to the next slide. And we arrived at this mission statement, as I mentioned, we started about 2 years ago, but it's really been a collaborative process over the time. So as part of Middle States, we had to survey our students, our families, our faculty and staff, our volunteers, our board of trustees. Everybody weighed in on our mission, and there was actually a subcommittee on the reaccreditation team dedicated to just thinking about the mission of the school. Through that feedback, what we realized is that there was a common shared understanding of our purpose. Everybody believed that we wanted to serve the girls well, and that is why we exist as a school. But what we found was that the words in our mission statement didn't always uphold and uplift the girls in a way that the whole school community could get around. Students didn't necessarily see themselves, families that didn't necessarily connect with them. So that was really what we viewed as our challenge. Last year, during the strategic planning process, we again picked up the mission statement and did additional focus groups with students, families, faculty, and staff, just thinking more about it, and held a collaborative work session. As a group, we had stakeholders from every part of the school just coming together in a room one day and just thinking about the mission statement itself and where we'd like to go with it. If you go to the next slide. What we had a hearty discussion on that day was understanding that words are important. We know that we knew that our mission statement wasn't necessarily connecting across the board all the time, but we recognized we wanted to come together to form something that would resonate with all of our constituencies. And we wanted to really have something that reflected where we were today. We spent some time as a result learning about asset framing language, and there's a short video that I'd like to share with you here. This is Trabian. He's done quite a bit of work with nonprofits and really has talked a lot and published quite a bit on what it means to use asset framing language. So we're going to listen to this for a moment.
Asset framing is about not defining people by their challenge. Right? So once you recognize that I aspire to be a scientist or a leader, or maybe I just aspire to graduate high school, like I have a goal to be a student, right? Whatever that aspiration is, if you acknowledge that aspiration before you go into my various challenges, you're telling a truer story about me, right? I don't run around believing I'm an at-risk this or a low-income that or a high poverty, high crime. Like no one carries around those labels thinking that's how I'm going to face the world, right? People think about it as, I want to maybe go to school. I want to maybe someday own a home. I want to maybe possibly get out of this neighborhood or come back to this neighborhood and build. Whatever that person's aspiration is, if you haven't bothered to acknowledge that aspiration before you engage them, then you've made them an object in the sentence. They are a thing to be dealt with, to be moved, to be manipulated. They are not a person. And once you start to engage people as obstacles, once you start engaging people as problems, then recognize that you now become the problem, right?
Okay, you can go to the next slide. What we recognized is that it's just sort of thinking about asset framing language and how it applied to us in our mission statement and our students. We recognized that we wanted to have something that would profile the graduate of WSG, something that really shared what we desire for our students, the hopes and dreams we have for them, acknowledging the hopes and dreams that they have for themselves. We wanted our mission statement to be something that really could inform our desired outcomes. We're a school that ends in 8th grade, but we stick with our students through high school, through graduate support, and certainly know that what we want is a desired outcome for their life where we have had a positive impact. We also felt like our mission statement should be aspirational, should be something that we all connect behind, but something that we also recognize this is a stretch. This is what we're working towards. This is what our community goal is. If you go to the next slide. So these are the words that are contained in our mission statement. And when we thought about choosing the words, we had a really hearty discussion again around what words we were going to use because words matter. So we chose ignites. Washington School for Girls ignites. We chose ignites because we wanted to recognize that there is something already inside of our students, that what our goal as educators is to ignite the fire for learning inside of them. We chose joyful pursuit. Joyful because we serve young girls. We serve girls in grades 3 through 8, and school should be joyful. It should be a place that you come to and you feel good when you're there, that you feel uplifted as a student. We chose pursuit as a word to suggest always seeking. We want our girls to always be seeking learning in their lives, and we want to be the ones that ignite that in them in their early years. We chose faith-filled, very important for us. We are a Catholic school, and we know that while all of our students are not Catholic, we wanted our students to recognize their own personal relationships with God, to recognize that they are created in God's image and that this can take them forward in their lives. We chose service because we want our girls to recognize that they have a lot to offer others, that they don't have to be the recipients of service, but they can give service to others. And we strive to have that be part of our program as well. And finally, we chose leadership because we do believe our girls are well positioned to be leaders in their future lives. We believe that now more than ever, their voices are important, and we want them to know their voices are important. Next. So once we had put together the mission statement, we took that statement back to our community, back to students, faculty and staff, families, and just tested it with them and said, you know, this is where we're going. How does this connect with you? And is this something that everyone can get behind? So we really just socialized the statement within our community. And if you go to the next slide. And this is again the statement. Washington School for Girls ignites the joyful pursuit of learning and inspires lives of faith-filled purpose, leadership, and service. What we find is that this new mission statement does connect with our students and families. They're excited about it. They see themselves in it. It's something that they can remember, that they can really take forward as a way to describe the school and how the school fits in their lives. We felt like staff views this as a bold vision for our future with our students. It's really something that everyone can connect behind and understand what we're working towards with our students. And with you, our community of supporters, we hope that this will illuminate for you just a way for you to describe and think about what you're partnering with as an organization and how it is that we're working towards serving our students well. If you go to the next slide. And so what I wanted to just connect on today then is if we think about our mission statement is then, it's something that, as I mentioned, it's the defining statement about the school and how we operate and where we're going. But I wanted to bring it back to sort of school today and how does the mission impact what we're doing right now? How does it impact our daily decisions? How does it drive how we see our school operations with the students? And so I'm going to talk about where we are today as a school and what things look like. So we are distance learning. This is a picture of what school looks like today. So on the right, you have a student in her home. We are completely remote with our students. We have 120 girls or so enrolled right now. On the left, you see our teachers. Our teachers are all working, that's one teacher, all working remotely with their students. It is much like this format that we are on right now, live instruction with our teachers and students. And thanks to our very generous supporters, we've been able to bring forward a program that we feel like is very robust and really supports our students' learning needs. If you go to the next. So in March is when schools all shifted to distance learning, and we made that shift as well. And so at that point in time, you know, when we first had to just move to remote operations, you just really had to do whatever it is you needed to do to reach the students. But over time, in particular over the summertime, we were able to reflect back on the spring and what we learned about what really worked with our students and what didn't work and what did teachers feel like they needed, and really enhance our program, knowing that we were going to bring it forward in the fall. So this is a sample schedule. This is, oh, go back one, Susan, sorry. This is a schedule from, I guess last week or 2 weeks ago with this is a 5th grade schedule. What the few things that I want to highlight here that we thought were really important is that we wanted to make sure we had daily live instruction with our students. So live instruction is when you are in just like what we're doing. You're in front of the computer and your teacher is right there with you at that exact same time. You can talk with them, you can interact, the teachers do activities. That was really important. So it's not so much that we give our girls packets and they're at home working independently. They actually are having live instruction with their students. We also wanted a schedule that mimics their daily schedule at school so that it would be comfortable for them. We also know that that is how we achieve success. So if you can see this schedule, just, going over the highlights of it, we start every day with morning prayer. Just like we do at school, morning prayer is led by our students. It is in this virtual format, but it is nearly the exact same prayer service that we use on campus, but it is virtual. And then students spend time in their core subjects. So this shows, these would be 3 different student schedules. So math and reading and language arts and religion is on the schedule for this period of time. In the afternoon, our teachers hold office hours, and really that's a time for students to get additional support with their teachers so they can check in one-on-one or small group. We also have we have AmeriCorps volunteers that work with our students, and that provides additional support for them during that time period as well. We also knew that one of the things we wanted to make sure we were providing during this time is strong student support. That is one of the things that's important about WSG's program overall, is the really supporting the whole child, but making sure that we're able to meet the needs of our students who have even significant academic deficiencies and rely on us to help them make progress. So our counselors, we have a great relationship with Christ Child to provide counselors to our schools that really support the social, emotional health and welfare of our students, and they have continued even in this environment. We do provide extracurricular activities. We're working on really beefing up what we are able to do with our students beyond the typical classroom lessons. As if you're familiar with us, during the regular school year, we have a very robust after-school program that has clubs, and we're located at the Arc, and they go to the Boys and Girls Club. That is all very different, and we are still trying to put together the right range of activities that we can bring forward virtually, but we do know that it's important for our girls to have experiences beyond just the academic, especially as they head off into high school. So we're working on bringing that forward to them as well. Finally, graduate support is a big part of our program, and that is both working with our students on applying to high schools, which still continues, certainly for the private and independent schools that our students, some of them desire to go on to. That process is different, but it still does continue. So we've been working with supporting our students and families on that, and then staying in touch with our students throughout high school and helping them to achieve whatever their next goals are beyond that, whether it's career or college ready, just making sure that students have the support that we're able to provide to them. That all continues even during this remote time. This little snippet in here is from one of our teachers to her class. I included that just so you could see. It's just a sample. She does this all day long, all kinds of messages all day long. But what she says in here is that we do record all of our classes. That's an additional level of academic support, so students can go back and watch them if they need to. They can slow them down, they can stop and pause it, and answer and get their own questions answered along the way. So that is all around student support. And then family support. So one of the big things that we worked on way back in the spring was making sure that our students all had the technology that they would need to connect from home. And so over the summer, we worked to even enhance that further. As it stands now, we've provided all of our students with Chromebooks, and have made sure that they all have that as the very basic minimum of what they need to connect with us. We have since throughout the fall had some families have concerns or challenges with Wi-Fi, so we have gone further and worked on providing hotspots for families. Now we're learning, some girls can benefit from noise canceling headphones so that they can really focus on that. So we're really just stepping up and trying to provide anything that we can to students that would make their experience, that would make them more able to engage in school and make their learning experience better. For our families in particular, I would say that, this is a challenging time for many. And we live in a community that is economically vulnerable, suffers from systemic racism. These are our families. And so for families that have had very extreme emergency needs, we've been able to provide some limited funding towards things like rent or transportation or utilities. And we're happy to do that because we feel like it's important to support our families, to support our students, and allow them to really remain in school. That is our main goal, is to provide the support around the student so that she is able to continue in school. We've had some very generous donors step forward and designate funds towards emergency funding, and that has allowed us to really share that with our families. All through the summer, we also maintained ourselves as connectors to our families, to community resources. So every week we send out a list of, food distribution or, applications for rent relief, or just whatever it is that we feel like could be helpful from other nonprofit organizations serving the Ward 8 community or serving specifically our families. And that has been much appreciated by our families. My final point is really just, we view our families as our partners in our students' education. We know that our families are the first teachers at home with our students. And if we are going to have success, we need to have good partnership with them. This little note that I included here was just from a thank you note that a family had received some emergency funding for us and wrote a really nice thank you note. And so it feels like for WSG, there is recognition that we are an important connector for families within their own communities as well. And so when I think about, trying to measure whether or not we're successful, what I do know is that our daily success depends on the girls have to have the tools to be able to get into class remotely. They need to have the support that they need to engage. Secondly, they have to show up. They just need to, if they're not there, you can have the best program in the world, but if they are not there, that is not going to be helpful, and certainly they will not progress. And the third is you need to have a program that engages girls right where they are. I wanted to share this attendance metric for us because I'm really excited about it. We've been in school since mid-August, so we've had probably 4 or 5 weeks in school. Our average attendance has been 98.9% of our students actually attending, and that's tremendous for us. There was a recent article in the New York Times that actually talked about chronic absenteeism is a problem with remote learning, particularly in urban school districts. And I would say that we are able to achieve this level of attendance because of the partnership that we have with our families. I'll also note that if a student doesn't show up, we immediately call home. And so, that helps with attendance because that's important for families to know if sometimes they don't recognize that their student isn't actually logged in with their teacher. So that is one of the ways that we mitigate having absentee problems. We've had several days where we've had 100% attendance already. And that is I don't know that we achieve that level of attendance when we're on campus. So it feels really good to just know that our students are showing up and at least beginning the process of engaging in their learning. And so when I step back and think about, the big question that I get quite often is, what has been the impact of COVID on the Washington School for Girls? I would say what I just shared with you is what our program looks like right now. This is what learning looks like. This is what classroom education looks like at WSG. So we had to shift to distance learning, but we feel really good about where we are and what we're bringing forward to our students. We have also shifted to support our families through emergency funding. That has definitely been something that is new, and to the extent that we can help, we intend to do so. We have thought budget-wise on our side of just reallocating our resources to meet this new way of doing school at WSG. An example would be that we don't, during the regular school year, we provide transportation for our students. We have a school bus. Obviously, we don't have that now, so we don't have the expense associated with the school bus. But as I just shared with you, we have had an increased expense in technology, tools, ongoing expenses related to all of the software and apps and everything that we're using and hotspots that we're providing. There's just been a significant increase. So we've been thinking a lot about how just shifting around our budget allows us to meet the school needs where we are right now. We have had an extreme fundraising focus as a result. We know that, we are a school that is 100% scholarship for our students. That is a commitment to us, to our families. And as a result, it is incumbent on us to raise the funds to run the school. And we know that this is a time when there are a lot of competing needs for our funders. And so we appreciate the support of us. When it comes back to our school mission, again, tying it back to where we are, I would say that, as we look at making decisions on how school will be and how school will continue to operate as we navigate through COVID, our mission requires really for us to listen to our families and our teachers and make sure we're serving our community well. So I do recognize that there are other schools, school districts, places that are very much in a hurry to be back on campus and very much want to be back on campus, which we do as well. We want to be back on campus. But the honest part is that our families are not necessarily asking for that right now. I was recently reading an article that talked about the racial differences in how COVID has impacted communities. And in Ward 8, Ward 8 has been particularly hard hit, and our families have expressed health concerns. Students have asthma or other underlying health conditions. Their families, their multi-generational homes, their people in the home that they worry about getting sick. It's just our families are not pushing, I would say, for us to be back on campus right now. And we honor that. We are, as a result, really just digging in deep and creating this robust learning experience. What we've said now is that we would like to try to be back on campus in January, but we will continue to survey our families and survey our teachers and reassess and see where things stand in December and make decisions accordingly. So that is all of the state of where we are right now. And I'm going to turn it over to Maureen McCarty, who again is the chair of our Board of Trustees, and she is going to look to the future for us.
Well, thank you so much, Beth. So the Board of Trustees had embarked on a really robust and collaborative process of strategic planning. Over about an 8-month period, we collaborated with students, parents, faculty, staff, alumni, volunteers, donors, and trustees, about 200 people who participated in surveys and discussion groups and focus groups and individual interviews. And using all the information that we gathered through the Middle States accreditation process, which was a very, very deep internal dive into the operations of the school, we were able to put together a strategic plan that we took to the board, and the board approved in February. And we were thrilled to have come up with some really innovative ideas for the future of how WSG can grow for the next 20 or 30 years. And all of a sudden the world turned upside down. So it seemed a little tone deaf to be sharing all of that with you during the spring and the summer when we had so many other priorities that we needed to focus on. The trustees are extraordinarily proud of the faculty and staff and the work that they have done to maintain school for our girls at the level that they have. They're just doing extraordinary work, and we're very, very proud of that. But our strategic plan is exciting, and you will be hearing more about it in the next few months as we begin to roll it out to you. There are 3 pillars of the strategic plan. They all go back and reflect on our new mission statement. So the first one is Girls and Learning, and it's about educational equity. So we intend, our strategic priority here is to deliver an innovative and intentional educational program for young girls of color. And how are we going to do that? We're going to demonstrate our success as a school through data-driven measurement and methodology. So we have a lot of work to do on the implementation of that piece, but we have great hopes for the strength of our, and we know the strength of our academic plan, our academics today. Our students go on to competitive high schools. We're very proud of them. And we just want to make sure that each and every one of them have great opportunities for their futures. We also want to attract and retain outstanding faculty, and we want to expand our capacity for an even broader educational program that includes the arts and science and technology, music. We have great aspirations for our girls, and we want to help them to achieve them. The second pillar of the strategic plan is Girls and Learning, the environment. So an environment where they learn, where they go every day is critical to their success in the future. And one of the things that came out of all of our conversations with all of our stakeholders was there's a great desire for us to be united on one campus, for the school to be united. What does that mean for us? It doesn't mean going out and building a building tomorrow. It means that we need to think about what our future is. Where do we want to be? How are we going to make plans for that? And right now, our focus is developing a master campus plan. So we want to start really digging into what our needs are, what our desires are, how can we best serve the girls, the faculty, their families, the community. What does that look like going forward? So we're going to be doing a lot of work in that space. And the last one is Girls and Learning, Sustainability and Stability. So, which just means that we have been and will continue to be careful stewards of all the resources that we're given. And we want to strengthen our financial foundation for the future. We have great plans. We have great hopes for being a school that is sending girls successfully off for their futures for 10, 20, 30 years to go. And we just need to work on sustaining and ensuring the longevity of the school. And to do that, to start doing that, we've done a deep dive into our development capabilities. We've hired a development consultant this summer and really looked at the ways that we fundraise and how we manage those operations. And we also want to focus on expanding our circle of supporters. So we're counting on all of our supporters to go out and bring more people into us, to teach them, to expose them to who we are, to help them understand the work that we do and how important it is. So those are the three pillars of our strategic plan, and you will be hearing more about them in the coming months.
In terms of what other opportunities might come up next for us to engage with you, we are creating a webinar series is what I guess I'll call it, Our Girls, Our World. And if you go to the next slide, Susan. What we are envisioning is a series of discussions, much like this, an online discussion around current topics of interest to our, just what's going on in the world and connecting it back to WSG and our students. Talking about educational equity and racial justice and how does that all translate to our students and our families? What do they think about the things that you may hear in the news? How might you understand the perspective of young girls living in Southeast DC and what they're seeing and they're hearing? So we look forward to sharing this with you as the fall goes on and hope you will engage. We envision this to be something that is just a space for you to come and hear and listen and share your own perspectives and just again really thinking about the current environment and all that you are hearing in the news and what might be the way to understand how that connects to Washington School for Girls. So those are the next steps in terms of what we're planning with our supporters. I'm happy to take questions now. That's all I have in terms of planned presentation. I do want to say, I just have to say again, I appreciate all of your generous support, and hope you can recognize that it is through the support and generosity of our donors that we're allowed to continue to bring this program forward to our students and our families. So I very much appreciate the support. So I'm gonna look in the chat box, Susan, I don't know.
And we had a couple of questions come in ahead of our meeting, one of which was about student enrollment this year, wondering how our enrollment was compared to different years due to COVID.
Yep. So this year we have, I think we're at 120, 119, 120 girls enrolled. It's a little bit lower than last year. We started the school year last year closer to 130. Part of the reason is because we are capping, we needed to, when we planned our program for this year, we thought that we needed to plan a program that could be held remotely, but also can shift back to on-campus learning and do it socially distanced way. So the numbers needed to work out so that we could space ourselves in classrooms accordingly. And in particular, in third grade, we capped that class at 16 for that reason. And so typically we try to shoot for more in the entering class for us, but for socially distanced reason, even though we're remote, we needed to plan to be back on campus. So that is how enrollment compares.
Wonderful. And then another question from early on is around how we are, from ahead of the chat, was around how we are dealing with volunteers during this time.
Yep. We are working on that right now. We, as I mentioned, we haven't quite brought together our whole extracurricular program yet. We are hoping to do that over the October-November timeframe. It's a little more difficult for us to figure out how to best use our volunteers, and just also recognizing the screen time and what we're asking of students and families to be on in terms of the screen time that they're on for academics. So our hope is that over the course of the fall that we will be able to come back to our volunteers with some meaningful opportunities to engage with us as a school. I'm just not quite sure what that is yet, but look forward to sharing more around that.
Wonderful. And then we have a question from Genevieve in the chat. If you needed to quantify the learning loss in the last half of the school year and the first half of this year, what would that number look like? 10% learning loss from the regular academic year, 20%, or is this impossible to quantify?
That's an excellent question. That is a really good question, Genevieve. So I can say a couple of things. One is, one of the important measurements that we use to measure our students' progress, in particular their growth, is MAP testing. And MAP testing is one of these that you set growth goals for the students and then you measure against it. We typically do MAP testing 3 times a year, in the fall, the winter, and the spring. Because of COVID last year, we did not do spring testing, so we don't have any results from that. However, we're coming into the fall, and actually we decided we just had to press forward. And even though we're remote, we needed to actually do MAP testing because we have to have some sort of indicator of where we are. We really just wanted to, a lot of our teachers' instruction is built on where they need to go with students. So we wanted that good information. So just last week, we we implemented our first round of MAP testing remotely. And it was an interesting learning experience. I can tell you we don't have results yet to speak of, mainly because we needed to use this week and next week for makeup. So a lot of the girls were not able to complete the full rounds of testing that you would get done when they're in school settings. So it's going to take us some time to see exactly what that looks like. So I hope that we'll have a measure sort of a little bit later on in the fall that I could give you something specific of what that looks like. I would say one of the other pieces that I could just speak to, it isn't necessarily a measurement, but part of our commitment to our students was in the spring, even when we had to shift remotely, was to have live instruction that was new material. That was really important for for students to continue to progress in their learning. And so while, some schools needed to focus just on remedial, just making sure that students had caught up and, that you were still covering the same material, we felt like it was important for us to have that live instruction also focus on new material. And that continues to be true now. So I'm hopeful that that will be a way that we have perhaps been able to mitigate any learning loss. But again, time will tell. So I hope that answers your question.
And I'll just jump in as well. We, as you may or may not know, have a number of foundation grants that are very data driven in our reporting. And so one of the things we did as we were doing year-end reports for last school year was we sort of triangulated our data. We looked at online attendance. We looked at grade point averages to see if there was a shift. We did not transition to pass-fail as many schools did. And we also looked at our student retention rates. We do on occasion have students that we hold back to repeat a grade because of their level of mastery of the content. And looking compared to previous years, our GPAs trended the same way that they typically do. We had a similar number of students who, we asked to repeat the current grade that they were in. So there were a number of measures we sort of tried to triangulate compared to previous years. And, there are so many mitigating factors, as Beth said. But I think those are a couple of sort of early pieces of evidence that we were at least continuing to move forward with the students, maybe not at the pace that we have previously, but there continued to be growth, which we were excited about. And I do have Pinky Mayfield wanted to ask her question verbally. So I'm going to just go ahead and unmute her. Okay. Oh yes, she is unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Beth. Thank you for a thorough presentation. I just don't type that fast, and so I need to get better at that. So it's better for me to ask it verbally. So two questions actually. Can you quantify? I mean, I recognize that there is a significant amount of expenditure around online learning and remote learning, but can you quantify your COVID costs to reopen? Do you have a sense of that just yet?
I don't know that I can quantify that wholly at this point. We're sort of working through all the mitigations. We're in two spaces. One of them is a shared space at the Ark. The other one is at the church at Our Lady of Perpetual Help. Ventilation is a big mitigator for COVID. The school building there is quite old with old windows, and we're currently in the process of under discussion is the best way to say on exactly how and who, might help mitigate some of the ventilation concerns there, because that can be a significant undertaking when you're talking about windows and, internal systems and all that. So that is a big piece that is an unknown. I would say that the other costs for us are, some of the things that you would see in terms of, having the proper markings and adaptations that you need to make in the classrooms. And those aren't necessarily as significant expenses, but we haven't actually figured out, because we haven't, made the plan to move back on campus yet. We haven't nailed down exactly what the quantifiers are. We need cleaning supplies, we need increased cleaning services, all of those kinds of things. We're working on that budget now as we look in earnest to try to open in January.
If you could pass that information along once you, I think there's several funders who might have some interest in helping you with that.
Sure.
So we should just have that discussion. And I don't think in context of your grand capital plan, but really just what does it take to get kids back on, back at Our Lady of Perpetual Help. And that's what I was thinking about, is that it's a really old school. So how are you going to manage that? The second question I have is really around faculty diversity. And can you speak to that a little bit? And then, then I'll have a follow-up to your response.
Sure. Is there anything in particular you want me to speak to on it?
Well, I just think that I think there's an opportunity here to incubate some diverse teachers at the same time, and there are also funding opportunities around getting people back to work, right? And so if there are teachers' aides who just require additional training or educational progression in order to physically be thought through their teaching credential and helping them along the way. I was just curious about how we are incubating diverse staff and not letting kind of qualification at the moment be a barrier, but how do we help them kind of achieve some parity, I think, in the workforce.
Okay, interesting. So in terms of our faculty makeup right now, we are, I would say, the area where we lack diversity in overall in our faculty would be male. We don't have very many male teachers in the school or staff members, to be honest. And if I were to think about just sort of racial or ethnicities of our faculty and staff, we are probably predominantly Black slightly, but not, but we are very diverse overall. We are very diverse staff. One of the pieces that we have more recently done this fall is just because we're in remote learning, we were able to hire a teacher. We hired back one of our teachers that 2 years ago had moved on to New York City because she got married, had a baby, but now we're remote and we had an opening. And so we hired her back on, even though she's still in New York City and she teaches remotely for us. And I felt really good about that because it, to me, was just an example of, okay, we really can acknowledge where we are and hire really good people to fill roles that we have a need for right now. And it has been, because all of our faculty meetings are just like this, and the times when we're together is exactly in this space, it allowed us to really do just that. We have several AmeriCorps volunteers that I think we have 3 this year right now that, and they actually all were with us last year, so they're returning a second year, but they, I would say the AmeriCorps volunteers are one staffing area that we have thought a lot about. How can we use them best to support the students in this moment that we're in right now? And, it's so different, again, than when we're on campus and the types of things, when we're on campus, they provide recess duty so the teachers can have a break, or they go into lunch, but that's not needed right now. And so what we've thought about is how can we use our AmeriCorps volunteers to provide the additional academic support that students need, and really bring that forward in a way that supports the students. So as an example, some of our students struggle with organizational skills, and this can be a very difficult learning environment for students who struggle organizationally. So we have used our AmeriCorps volunteers in support specifically for those students around that aspect. So I'm not sure if I'm completely getting at your question. Okay, good. I feel like, the good part is on the administrative side, we have been thinking a whole lot around who are the adults in our community, what are our students' needs, and how can we all just shift and adapt and do what we need to do to sort of meet our students where they are. Good. So I got a thumbs up from Pinky. I think that answered her question.
Great, and we have a few more in the chat here. So Kathy asks for some examples on some of the creative ways that we are teaching to meet learning differences in remote learning. And in addition to rewinding and office hours, I think following off of, you were speaking a little bit to student support, looking for some more examples.
Well, I think the example I just gave Pinky would be one, in that we, you know, outside of the classroom teachers, we do have other adults that work with the students individually or in small groups. We have a math specialist and a learning specialist, and they do, in addition to teaching in the classroom, you know, the larger group setting, they do individual support and small group with support as students as needed. In terms of creative teaching, I have to say I sat in on, I've sat in on a few classes. Each time I sit in on the class, I am amazingly blown away at our teachers' ability to bring forward instruction to our students. So as an example, I sat in on a 5th grade math lesson. So it was about 45 minutes long. In that period of time, it was like this for a short period of time. She was delivering instruction and the students were receiving it. Then she led them to a quiz portal. She still sees them on camera, but they're off, you know, on this other portal taking a math quiz. She's seeing what they're doing at the moment, so she could correct them, you know, at that time. Like, you know, I see that you're not on the, you know, on the right slide for exactly where you need to be. So she worked with them another place, brought them back into this group, had them do a competitive sort of out loud math challenge in that moment, told the winner of that they would be receiving an order of donuts to their house somehow, like next Wednesday. I don't even know how that all came together. As well as the second runner up was going to receive a sparkly unicorn surprise, which I'm sure completely connected with 5th graders. But at the end of the period, I'm just sort of saying that all to say I was exhausted on her behalf. And that was just one period. But this is, you know, these are what our teachers are doing to engage our students, to meet them where they were. And while that was a whole group lesson, I know that she was able, there was even one point in time I heard her say on camera, you know, so-and-so, I see that you're not paying attention right now. I'm thinking, how is she seeing that she's not paying attention? I just am floored at their ability to manage the classroom. Our class sizes are small. That's definitely a huge mitigator for their ability to teach well in this environment. We don't have any groupings that I think are larger than 12 in this environment. Right now we have however many people, we have 23 people on. So, you know, we have half the number, teachers are generally working with half the number of students on camera. And I think that that definitely helps as well. So I hope I've done justice, Kathy, to your question in providing answers for our teachers, because they are like magicians on a daily basis, just coming from a deeply thoughtful place of understanding remote learning.
Wonderful. And we have a question for Maureen, just to speak a little bit more to the aspect of the strategic plan around our school environment, school building. The question is, you know, do I correctly understand you may be seeking a new site for the school? If so, what difficulties do you think you will encounter in seeking a site in DC?
Colette, thank you very much for the question. So I have to say, we're at a very high level beginning of conversations about what our future looks like. We are not ready to really look at sites. We just want to understand what our needs are first, what our needs are, what our desires are, what are our goals, before we start, you know, an exhaustive search on either a location or consider expanding or improving some of this, either of the places where we are currently, where we are located currently. So we just want